Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is January 4th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, this is the first video for the year, and I'm wishing you guys, first of all, a very happy new year. Hopefully, this is going to be a good year for you. And as I've said multiple times in the past, I can only wish you one thing: it is good health. Now, let's get to the news because there's a lot of things to cover. I haven't made a video in the last few days. And so I first want to go in Crimea before I then head into eastern Ukraine in Donbass. So there's some good news out of Sevastopol. A command post, a Russian command post, was hit today, and reports are mentioning of several dead Russian soldiers. It's not confirmed yet what exactly hit this command post. Could be Storm Shadows, could be something else. But what is certain is that a Russian command post was targeted most likely by Ukraine today. So this is excellent news. Another excellent news is in Russia. So in the Oblast of Chelyabinsk, which is, I think, central Russia, there was a video that was uploaded today by the Ukraine Defense Intelligence showcasing essentially Chelyabinsk, as you can see, is more in central Russia. And a video that was posted by the Ukraine Defense Intelligence, which showcased some saboteur which entered an airfield and torched an Su-34. Now, the damage is not really known, but certainly if a saboteur was able to enter the airfield and start a fire on the airplane, I mean, the damage would probably be serious enough to decommission it for a very long period of time at the very least. And it just showcases as well. I'm very surprised how easy it was for this saboteur, if that is the case, to have entered the airfield and torch a multi-million-dollar modern jet fighter. I mean, you would never believe this would happen, let's say in the United States or other, Western countries. And yet in Russia, you can simply enter an airbase in Chelyabinsk and torch a multi-million-dollar bomber. Absolutely ridiculous. So this is another excellent news. Russia's lost, now it's close to almost 10 Su-34s. I know I'm exaggerating. It's probably, I think, around the vicinity of 7 Su-34s that Russia's lost in the last 2-3 weeks, including some other jet fighters, which I haven't mentioned. So very close to a dozen jet fighters that Russia's lost almost in a month. Very, very large amount of air assets that Russia has lost. So this is excellent news as well. Ukraine is specifically targeting, I think, jet fighters because they have been causing a lot of problems for the Ukrainian forces in the east of Ukraine, where Russia is conducting multiple campaigns right now on offensives in Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and in Kupiansk, the entire Kupiansk, Svatove, and Crimea line, to essentially regain the momentum, which they have regained at this point. And Russia is really attacking on all fronts, whether it be, as I mentioned, in eastern Ukraine or also in the south. Now, again, I will go back into Avdiivka, into my map update. To be very honest with you guys, in the last week, in the last few weeks or even months, there haven't been any really big map changes. And Russia is slowly trying to gain ground, but it's very difficult for them. So, since my last update, map update in Avdiivka, the Russians have made very minimal gains in the north of Stepove. Essentially, you can see here along this railway line. So they have crossed some of these areas, but they're being destroyed by Ukrainian artillery, also by Ukrainian FPV drones, and also the Bradleys. Ukraine is really utilizing these Bradleys, these American Bradleys, to great effect. That 25mm Bushmaster cannon is just destroying and obliterating the Russians. And it's not just in Avdiivka, but also in Kupiansk direction, other directions. Ukraine has been utilizing these very few Bradleys that are received. Again, please, America, send more of them. This is absolutely crucial. I've heard stories of many Americans that are saying that they've seen and witnessed these scrapyards in the American desert, whether it be in California or in Nevada or Indiana, where these Bradleys are just sitting, rusting away. And this is American taxpayers' money literally being thrown down the drain, right? These are Bradleys that have been built to destroy Soviet armor, Soviet soldiers. And let's face it, Russia is no different than the Soviet Union. And so they have proven themselves to be great assets for the Ukraine military in the last few months. And I think that the United States needs to send even more of them, hundreds of them, because there's so many of them that are just rusting away in the United States. So overall, the Russians have made very marginal gains in the north of Krasnohorivka, the north of Avdiivka, but also some small gains in the south. You can see that they have pushed the Ukrainians a little bit more on the western side of Vodyane. So this is in the south of Avdiivka. But overall, the situation, if we look at the map, in the last few weeks has been pretty much the same. The Russians have not been able to really head in the center or push to the center of Avdiivka. They've rather tried to now extend their reach in the outside of Avdiivka and extending, their gains in the north and the south, which of course they're having some success, but at a great price. So this is the situation for Avdiivka. Additionally, if we go to Bakhmut, you know that the Russians have renewed their campaign, their counteroffensive here. They are trying to reverse the Ukrainian gains that were made back in the summer. And the success that they're having right now is mostly in the north. So right now they're pushing towards Bogdanivka, this small little village that isn't too far away from Chasiv Yar, a few kilometers away. So the Russians are really trying to push the Ukrainians out of Bogdanivka and then have an open road to Chasiv Yar, which I don't think is going to happen. But again, it shows that the Russians are really trying this winter to make as many gains as possible. Especially because, as I've said previously, and everybody knows that the Russian elections will be in March of this year, and Putin needs some sort of victory for the Russians. He needs to continue showcasing that their special military operation is going according to plan. 20 months, and this is still called a special military operation by Russia. So in Bakhmut, the situation is indeed difficult for the Ukrainian forces. They're really trying to do everything possible to hold the line, but it's difficult, especially when Russia has amassed tens of thousands of soldiers in this front line, and they absolutely do not care about their lives. So the Russians are completely fine with losing hundreds of men if necessary to gain a few square meters of terrain. And also in the north, as I've mentioned, nothing has really changed between Kupiansk and Crimea, a few back and forth changes. But today, I've seen a video of another disastrous Russian armored assault against Ukrainian positions close to Sinkivka. And this is another typical Russian convoy that heads in one line and then hits mines, is confused, doesn't know where to go, and then gets obliterated by FPV drones, more mines, and then also artillery. So this is what happened in this video today. Russia's lost about 4 or 5 armored vehicles, a demining tank, and dozens of soldiers that were trying to most likely storm the Sinkivka positions, which Ukraine is currently holding. So this is just business as usual for Russia. Every morning, they're doing the same type of attacks throughout the front line. Now, another update I need to give you guys, and this is a little bit concerning, of course, is the Orikhiv axis. So you can see that the Russians are on full-on offensive mode. So this was the main Ukraine push back in the summer, only to now find themselves being in a defensive position. I'm talking about the Ukrainian side, of course. And you can see that in the last few days, since my last map update, you can see that this was a great area, and the Russians managed to capture these fields that are south of Robotine, and also, north of Verbove. So in this general direction, the Russians are doing everything possible to really reverse these Ukrainian gains that were made in a few months. And of course, the Ukrainians, as it was said previously, have not had this blitzkrieg type of offensive in the summer because they did not want to lose, many soldiers in this offensive, fully knowing that they did not have air superiority, they did not have enough assets to be able to really drive out the Russians from these deeply mined positions, full of trenches, barbed wire, dragon's teeth. It was very difficult for the Ukrainians. So, of course, now Ukraine doesn't have the choice but truly try to defend as best as possible these positions. But it's still very concerning because, of course, it hurts to see that some of these gains are now being reversed by Russia. But, of course, this is a great price. The Russians, now this is a new update, but 360,000 dead or 360,000 casualties. 6,000 tanks that were lost up to today, 8,500 artillery units and pieces, 11,000 armored vehicles that Russia's lost. That could be anything from a Tiger vehicle, armored vehicle, to something more armored, like, they have many different variants of just transport vehicles that are armored. 23 ships, that we know is a huge Ukrainian victory as well, in 2023 to destroy 20% of the Russian Black Sea fleet and render it useless, and hundreds of aircraft and helicopters. As I've mentioned, Russia's lost already 6 or 7 Su-34s in the past few weeks, along many other jet fighters and helicopters as well. So this is a disastrous war for Russia, and I don't think they'll ever be able to recover from it in a short span of time. Of course, over the long period of time, if they are allowed to, broker, or somebody brokers a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia that is advantageous for Russia, they will only rearm themselves. In the long term, they will continue their attacks, whether it be in Ukraine or NATO or other countries that they deem are unfavorable. They will do so. And so we cannot allow the Russians to rearm, to force the West, the free world in Ukraine, to pause, which will be beneficial for Putin. This is why he's so desperate right now for talks. And you can see it through the various speeches that Putin has made, and also his lack of, he did not mention the Ukrainian war during his New Year address, or very little about it. And that just showcases that Putin understands that if he continues like this, maybe in a year or two, he won't have enough anymore to be able to continue his massive campaign in Ukraine. So we need to understand that the Russians, and Putin specifically, understand only strength and power. And when they face power, they back down. That is clear and evident. Just look at Prigozhin and his mutiny, and how Putin was ready to just give up everything just to, save his ass. And that's exactly who Putin is as a person. So anyways, let me know what you guys think about these comments that I've made about Putin, the Russian offensive. This is just a small little map update in terms of, the recent changes in the south of Ukraine and also in the east of Ukraine. And of course, what is going to help the Ukrainians maybe even stop partially this southern offensive by the Russians is destroying the, it kind of zoomed in, the Kerch Bridge. Destroying the Kerch Bridge, fully destroying it, not just damaging it, will help the Ukrainians remove some of that pressure that they're facing in the south. The Russians simply won't be capable to move as many supplies safely anymore, compared to the situation right now, where they have the Kerch Bridge, and they also have another connection through Rostov, which is more dangerous for the Russians and longer as well. Whereas here they have already railway connections that are very far away from the front line, which can supply all of its forces in the south, including Kherson and Crimea. So when you cut off that access, this makes the logistics for the Russians much more difficult and dangerous as well. So this is why this needs to be destroyed ASAP by Ukraine. And I hope that this is going to happen very soon with, reports like I've mentioned early in the early few minutes of the video, the strike on the Sevastopol command center. Ukraine has that capacity to hit Russian targets. So yeah, this is the video for today, guys. Another thing I want to mention is one last news is that there's some worrisome news about Russia utilizing North Korean ballistic missiles, and that is confirmed already, that Russia's utilized several times North Korean ballistic missiles to strike civilian targets or other targets in Ukraine in the last few weeks. So Russia is able now to procure itself ballistic missiles from various partners, and it's also in discussions with Iran to also buy their short-range ballistic missiles. So it's very concerning that Russia now has found, obviously, allies that are willing to supply ballistic missiles and other missiles or weapons that are going to continue terrorizing the Ukrainians, like what we've seen the last 2 weeks during the holidays, where Russia was completely happy with striking all the Ukrainian cities, terrorizing the population, just, removing the holidays from the Ukrainian people, making it as scary as possible. That's what Russia is. And everybody in Russia, the majority of the people, are rejoicing at these news. They're completely ecstatic. And what is worrisome as well is it's not unexpected, but the Russians, it seems to me, they're enjoying far more seeing the pain and suffering and the deaths of innocent civilians rather than seeing the deaths of Ukrainian soldiers. For them, it's like twice of a high, seeing dead civilians in Dnipro and Zaporizhia and Kiev struck by kinjals or Shahid drones, rather than seeing videos of Ukrainian soldiers either being executed or killed in combat. For the Russian population, most of them appreciate way more seeing the terrorist attacks on civilians. So it's, of course, just the mindset and the nature of the majority of the Russians. I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's, of course, at this point, 20 months in this conflict, and you see the Russians just being interviewed. And I will showcase you, actually, guys, one of that interview that was made in the streets. And they're absolutely either apathetic to the war, or they're absolutely happy with how Russia's conducting their special military operation against the Ukrainians. And actually, I'm going to read the captions out of this video to you guys. So just, again, it's a snapshot of the mindset of the Russians. And this was filmed on December 14th, so not too long ago, a few weeks ago. So here we go. Direct line with President Putin. What would you ask him if you had the opportunity? I would ask why he didn't destroy Ukraine with nuclear weapons, says this man. The lives of our soldiers are more important than that gray something, meaning Ukrainians. Some old Russian pensioners, look at them. They're so happy walking most likely in the streets of Moscow, or I'm not sure where this was filmed, or St. Petersburg. We have no questions. Nothing comes to mind. We're happy. Everyone today is fixated on the SMO. Of course, we would like this to end as quickly as possible. In any case, we hope that our victory will be no matter what. Our cause is just, and will defeat Ukraine. With a big smile on her face. Until your husband is called for mobilization. He's been awfully quiet, her husband. Yeah. Then the orator continues. Vladimir Putin said that Russia has never refused negotiations with Ukraine. Would you support negotiations? Question mark. No, of course not. I believe that this is inappropriate. We probably now only need complete victory. We need to fight to the last. No any peace talks. And although I am very sorry for our boys, I still think that we shouldn't have any peace negotiations. The conditions for a truce that I could explain are impossible, says this old lady. I'm so cruel. Erase Ukraine from the face of the earth. Just leave the churches there. Yes, I'm so cruel. Erase Ukraine from the face of the earth, says this old Russian lady. Just think about just the genocidal thoughts that these Russians have. How, as I said, they're absolutely happy and they enjoy far more seeing dead Ukrainian civilians and dead Ukrainian soldiers. Well, if the issues resolved peacefully and some compromises are found, then why not? Well, compromise that will suit us in the first place. Only on our terms. Those territories that we, so to speak, liberated, these territories and people, they must remain part of the Russian Federation. I am for peace negotiations. This is where our Russian army is located at the moment, and all this should be next to our territory. This is 100%. So you could call it cherry picking, but he has interviewed a lot of people in this very short video. And they're different ages, whether it be a young woman like her, a mother, pensioners, pretty much the vast majority of the Russians are very happy and rejoices in the deaths of innocent civilians. And it's sickening to see it. I didn't want to believe it in the beginning. I thought they were just a small minority of Russians in the early phase of the war. But now we must come to terms that Russia, as a current nation, is very, almost no different than fascist Germany. The chauvinism, this feeling like they have the right to just go in other countries, destroy them, and assimilate the population, torture them, kill them, kidnap kids is fine because they have the right to do so. After all, they're the ones that apparently are being attacked by NATO, that the West is attacking them and they have no choice but to, commit these atrocities. So anyways, this is the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my update. Again, I really appreciate your support. Let me know what you guys thought about any of the comments that I covered today, and I will see you in the next one. Slava Ukraini!